Hey, what's up you guys? I'm Sarah Lebrat and today we are doing a Q&A that is the celebration of reaching 2,500 subscribers. The lighting is probably very bad because I'm in a hotel, but this is kind of as good as I can get it. So this is what we're working with today. And by today, I do mean tonight because it is currently 9 p.m. and I've been traveling for like 10 hours. So here we are. In celebration of reaching 2,500 subscribers here on YouTube, I did send a question out on my YouTube community tab and my Instagram page, which by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, you should. It's at Sarah Lebrat Writes, asking you guys what questions you want me to answer today in this video about my writing process, about me in general, about pretty much anything. And we got quite a variety of questions here today. And so I'm going to start out with writing-based questions and then move into personal. Before we get started, I do just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. I did not realize that I was going to be at 2,500 subscribers so quickly, and I'm just over the moon. And so I appreciate every single one of you and interacting with you guys down in the comments. So basically, thank you so much for subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, I really hope that you guys give it a big thumbs up because it really supports my channel. And now let's get into it. Okay, the first question today comes from Carly here on YouTube, and it says, congrats on 2.5K. Thank you. Where do you feel like you've seen the most improvement between your first draft and your third draft, and what's your favorite writing snack? Okay, so if you don't know, I am currently working on draft 3 of my project DE, which is a high fantasy told from 3 points of view. And draft 3 has so far been a complete rewrite from draft 2 into draft 3. Not kind of, I made 1,015 notes for myself in that document. And then I was basically going off of those notes and draft 2 to write draft 3. And it's been a long process so far. Not as long as some of my drafts, but I'll get to that in a minute because there was a question about that. But where do I feel like I've seen the most improvement between first draft and third draft? That's a great question. One of my goals for doing this like complete rewrite, I'm calling it, but it's not a complete rewrite. But basically the goal of doing this rewrite into draft 3 was to bring every piece of the writing up to my current writing ability and where I stand as a writer and how I want the story to be. And so I'm updating every sentence pretty much to bring it up to my current writing standard and my current writing abilities. So overall, I think that the writing is just stronger consistently because I'm a much stronger writer now than I was when I first started this project. And my favorite writing snack would probably either be popcorn or chocolate. Probably chocolate though, because I'm actually like kind of allergic to popcorn, and so I only eat it when I'm at my parents' house because they have stockpiles of it. So I would probably have to say chocolate, even though really when I sit down to write, I don't really munch. I mostly just need a glass of water sitting next to me, but if I had to pick one, definitely chocolate, and dark chocolate. Let's not kid ourselves. The next question is from Catherine here on YouTube. What is your favorite book written by someone else? And if that is too hard, what is your favorite fantasy or sci-fi novel? Great question. The question is still too hard. I might give you a couple to answer this question. I'm currently rereading the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I forgot how much I freaking love these books, but I love the trilogy. So I don't know if that counts, but I would definitely reread the books again, even though I'm rereading them now. I would definitely reread them again, which I think really shows how good they are. However, when I was like thinking about this question, the top 2 books that came to my mind were Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas, the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series. And I've only read that book once, and then I went back and reread parts of it, but I really want to reread that book again because it was so freaking good. And then probably my favorite book, if we're thinking like my favorite book of all time, it would probably have to be a book about dragons, but then that's where things kind of get tricky. It would probably have to be the Dragon Slippers series by Jessica Day George. Like those books are so influential to me in my writing, and like I read those at the perfect time. I read those when I needed to read those. It was the story I needed. Like it was right place at the right time. It was so good. Probably my favorite book series, at least my favorite nostalgic book series, because that is definitely middle grade. But those 3 books were very, very, very influential to me. I'm sure I have a lot of favorite books that I'm not remembering. I do remember loving a book called Scorpio Races. That was such a good book. I think I went in with relatively low expectations and I was just blown away. That's probably why I liked it so much, but when I read this question, that was one of the couple that popped into my head. Kaylee asked me, who's my favorite character that I've ever written? This is hard, but I think I do have an answer. I have not talked about this character much on my YouTube channel yet because I have not really worked with my project that I worked in high school since I've had this YouTube channel, but I might be going back to that project at some point. I don't know yet. But my favorite character I've ever written is definitely my character named Christy from LRF. Christy is just like, she's the heroine I needed when I was in high school. However, when I was writing LRF, and the reason that I got tabled for so long was I wrote LRF over a span of like 4 years, aka most of high school, maybe first year of college, I don't really remember. It might have even been longer than that, honestly, because before high school I wasn't really tracking my words, so I might have started that in like 7th or 8th grade. But I worked on this book for like 4 or 6 years or something, a long time, and I just felt like I was not at the place to do Christy justice. And one of the problems with the book is that the storyline does actually not follow Christy, but I think the story is about her. And so I'm trying to figure out how I want to deal with that now, and or if I ever want to go back to this project. I don't know. I hope to reread it at some point in 2021 because she's such an incredible character. She was one of the first characters I thought about when working on the project, and is definitely somebody that I looked up to, even though she was fictional and entirely in my head. And I had so many ideas for her. Like, I think her portion of my idea document is like 20 pages out of 60 or something. Like, all of her like dialogue snippets that I wasn't able to include in the rough draft. Like, it has so much potential. She's such a great character. I just don't want to mess it up. Second favorite character is definitely Caden in my current work in progress, which is my project DE. And I don't know why, but I think there's something very charming about her. In the beginning, I thought that she and I had a lot in common. We have since split ways and are no longer super identical. And I never wrote her as like a self-insert or anything. It was just, we had a lot of things in common. And I think that that character was who I needed to be writing at the stage in my life where I was first drafting this book. And so I would say that my answer to this question is between Christy from LRF and Caden from DE. If you can't tell, I have a problem with K names. In LRF, there are 7 K names out of 12 named characters. I have a problem. Miguel asked me, how do you plot or get ideas for a fantasy novel specifically, and how do you plot a series? Well, as far as plotting a series go, I just did that for the first time here recently, and I used the story gridding technique. I made a whole video about it. I will be linking that up here and down in the description box below for you to go watch after this. But I basically followed the template that J.K. Rowling uses, as well as a bunch of other authors, but I first found out about it because J.K. Rowling used it, and I made a video called I Tried Outlining Like J.K. Rowling. It did very well. That video actually passed 10,000 views on the same day that my channel passed 2,500 subscribers, so thank you. And then recently I did a follow-up to that video because a lot of people were asking me like, okay, this video only spans the first book, like what happens to the other 2? You were talking about how this was going to be a series. And so then I made a similar video trying to outline the series. So I would recommend going and watching that because I touch on it more. I'm not entirely sure because that was the first time I did it, so my techniques will likely change in the future, but I think that it was a solid first effort. As far as plotting or getting ideas goes, I tend to see a picture or think of a scenario or a setting or something, and the ideas slowly come out through world building. And not intentional world building either. It's like making a Pinterest board that like things kind of come together. And I essentially build more of an aesthetic before I actually work with a plot. But ideas seem to come randomly to me, and like they are very finicky creatures, and so I have a lot of like ideas written down on my phone because when I think of them, I'm typically out and about, I'm in bed, I'm in the shower, whatever, and I have to like write it down quickly. And then I like let it sit for a few days, let it marinate kind of, and then if I think that it's something solid enough where I want to actually start developing that idea, I will make it a Pinterest board. I'll go through, pin things that I think are relevant, and kind of go from there. It's a very world building heavy approach, and I don't plot before I write, or have not done a whole lot of plotting before I start writing. So I don't really have a great answer for this. Charlie asked, what are your tips for fleshing out characters? Do you have any weird things that really work? So this probably will go back again to Pinterest boarding, and for whatever reason, Pinterest boarding really works for me. When I kind of get a concept of the characters that I want to include in the story, or whatever characters are kind of speaking to me for the story that I'm working on, it kind of seems like I find not pictures of what they look like, but all like aesthetic things. I don't like saying that for whatever reason, but it is. It's like any quote snippets that they would either read or write or say, any colors that they might like or be into or kind of like personify their character. If they're working with a weapon, I tend to find the weapon before I figure out what the character themselves looks like. I kind of like figuring out the details of people first rather than starting out with like, oh, I want a guy who's gonna be like 6'4" and kind of working that way. I very much like working backwards where I'm kind of like, all right, this person's gonna be really into poison or archery. Like, what does that kind of say about them as a person and their character? And then I kind of build backwards from that. And then I tend to go to clothing or like kind of like what I think their mood is in clothing. And so it's all about the Pinterest board. Sonia asked, how long does it take you to write a rough draft? Great question, and too long. That's it, just too long. LRF, which is the book that I wrote pretty much in high school. Like I said a little bit earlier, it takes me somewhere between 4 and 6 years. And then my project DE took me like 3.5. And my problem is that I wonder if I'm just a slow first drafter, which could be totally true. Or if a huge part of it was that I was in school, I was either in high school or college during those 2 projects, and was definitely putting school first, as one should when they're trying to get a degree. So it takes me a long time, in my experience, to write a rough draft, although I'm actually going to hopefully be trying to draft something quicker in the upcoming months and or later this year. I'm not sure about the timeline yet. I would like to be able to write a rough draft in less than a year though. That is the goal, because 4 years is not sustainable with the writing career that I want to have. Okay, Alex asked me a very interesting question, and that is, if you could only read one author for the rest of your life, who would you read? Sarah J. Maas. I just feel like she writes enough in young adult, new adult, and adult now with Crescent City that there's a wide enough range. Yes, it's all fantasy, which is perfect for me, but Throne of Glass has wyverns at the very least, and so that's what I need, is like a strong author who writes about dragons, and even if they take a backseat to the story, I think that Sarah J. Maas's writing and everything else that happens in the stories covers enough that I can very happily read her and only read her for the rest of my life, especially because she puts out like 2 books a year, so I'd be happy. I would be happy. For sure. That's important. I need an author that publishes a lot, and I know twice a year is not like a lot. It is for the size of books that she publishes though. Danny asked me, what is the work that inspired you the most and why? So I actually made a whole video about this. I actually made an original tag video about this that anyone is free to do, and I will link it up here as well as in the description box below. But basically I talked about the 5 books and or book series that has impacted my writing the most, influenced my writing the most, and inspired, I guess in a way too can be covered with that. But I'll give you one of the 5 that I did mention in that video, and that again was the Dragon Slippers series by Jessica J. George. I think that I read it at a point in time where I was really imprinted by fantasy. It was just the right dragon book that I needed to read at that point in time. Eleanor here on YouTube asked me, do you have a publishing plan? Are you going traditional or indie, and when do you think you'll start the process? And then was also like, sorry if you've already talked about this, I may have missed a video where you explain this, so no worries if you've already answered it. I have answered it, but things have kind of kept changing and kept getting pushed back a little bit as, like, you know, 2020 happened and all that fun stuff. And so there's been a lot going on. So I might as well update you guys on what my current thoughts are about publishing. And my goal is that DE will be the first book that I publish, hopefully. And my goal is that in March I will get it out to beta readers, and then I will look at beta feedback in April, kind of assess how many more drafts and stuff I need to do, and then I hope to start querying agents before the end of the year. I do think that DE would do very well as a traditionally published book, and so I would definitely like to pursue that path with DE. I am not opposed to self-publishing by any means. I've just had a dream that DE would be traditionally published for a long time, and so I kind of want to honor my younger self in that and get it traditionally published if that is the path that the book should take. If things change though, things change, who knows? I can't predict the future. So hopefully at some point in 2021, I will be beginning to query agents, which is a terrifying thought, but very, very exciting. My plan was the end of 2019. I wanted to finish DE so that I could start pursuing publishing in 2020, and then 2020 hit, and then my goal got bumped back again, and it was like, okay, now I want to start querying before the end of 2020. That didn't happen. We're still on draft 3. So the goal is end of 2021, hopefully. Angela asked me, what books are on your anti-TBR list? This was a very interesting question, and I had to like make sure that I was reading this right, but she wants to know what books I'm not going to read. I thought about this a lot, but I wasn't really sure. However, I have not ever been into reading horror books. I get freaked out really easily, and so I know that this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I don't have a book that I would say is on my anti-TBR list, but I just don't read horror. Brie asked me, do you have any dream agents in mind? Hard question. I have not gotten far enough to actually start looking for agents. I've only very like super briefly looked when I tried drafting a query letter a while ago, and I don't really know, and that's so hard for me to say. So no like dream agents, but I do have dream publishing houses, and the like dream publishing house is Bloomsbury, and that's probably because all of my favorite books come from Bloomsbury. I don't know why, but every book that I've like absolutely loved and adored was printed and published by Bloomsbury. So I think that's the dream. Alice asked me if I would ever consider self-publishing, and the answer to that is yes. Again, not for Project DE, but I definitely think that some of my other projects might be more suited for self-publishing, and I'm not totally sure what that looks like yet because I'm not very far on many of those projects. If you want to know more about my projects that are not DE, because DE is like the one that I talk about on this channel the most, I did make a whole video called All the Books I Want to Write, and I will link that up in the cards as well as in the description box below so that you can check that video out after you're done watching this one, because I was actually very surprised that I had like 15 pretty developed ideas, and some of those are better suited towards self-publishing, which is cool. Alice asked what to do when you struggle with a scene or inspiration for a certain moment. I'm going to answer this as if you are currently like sitting at your writing desk and then hit a wall of some kind, whether that's writing block or not, and how I tend to combat this when I can. Sometimes it doesn't work very well. Sometimes I just need to step away from the page and just like let it rest for a few days. But typically if I'm like sitting at my desk and something's not clicking, I will stand up and do a productive break, which is where I like leave my computer or whatever I'm writing on in another room and then go accomplish productive tasks like unloading the dishwasher, making my bed, doing a load of laundry, whatever it is, cleaning for 15 minutes. Basically something that doesn't happen for very long, like no longer than like 15-20 minutes or so, and then go straight back into writing. I have noticed that these productive breaks give me a lot of clarity because my brain keeps working, because it's a rather like brainless task. You've done it a million times, but your hands and your body stay busy, so your brain can just like drift off and think of whatever. And whenever I take these productive breaks, my brain then tends to think about the project that I was working on before I took the break. Fatima asked, how are you feeling to have so many subscribers just to see you writing? Did you anticipate it? No, but I'm glad you guys are here. I covered this a little bit in my video where I talked about what I accomplished in 2020, and my goal for the year of 2020 was 500 subscribers. And so I ended up finishing 2020 with just under 2,500, so almost 5 times what my goal was, especially starting the year with like 92 subscribers. So blew me away. As soon as I hit 500 subscribers in April, which was month 4, and that was my goal for the entire year, I was like, okay, people are liking something that I'm doing, and I really appreciate all of the love and support. But no, I did not anticipate it to the degree that it is happening, but I'm just along for the ride. I'm just gonna keep putting out content that I'm proud of, and hopefully you guys will continue to enjoy it. What cover style would you like for your projects? You can use references to explain. Okay, great question. I did not think about this question before starting to film this video, so we're gonna see what I can come up with on the spot. Okay. So I like relatively, I wouldn't say simplistic covers. I like covers that are very visually interesting, but still relatively minimalistic. I do not like covers with people on the front. And so I would definitely want something for a sci-fi. I love something like this. For a fantasy, I love something like this. The hard part is that I would love to have a dragon on the front cover of DE, but I don't know if dragons are important enough to the plot itself to actually warrant having a dragon on the cover, but I don't know what it would be instead. This is such a good question, and I really wish I had a better answer for it, because you need something that people are going to see on either social media, in a bookstore, on Goodreads, whatever, and that people are going to feel drawn into it and want to find out more. And so this is a great freaking question. I think that the Red Queen series has great covers, just the some minimalistic crowns. Each covers a different crown with like blood dripping off of it. Those are good covers, and like it drew me in. I picked up the first one, read the first one, did not continue reading because I heard that the books just kept getting worse, and then I kind of hit a reading slump and then just kind of like stopped reading, so that didn't help either. But like those are gorgeous. You know what, I'll just force this on editing, Sarah, and flash up here on the screen some that I think are really cool. I'm just gonna make her do this later so that I don't have to think about this right now. Charlie asked me, what is your least favorite character you have ever written and why? Great question, and I love this question, but I don't know if I know an answer to it. I want to say that my least favorite character I've ever written was the bad guy from LRF. But like recently they've been growing on me, and so I don't know if I can actually say that. And why? It was because of their motivations, but now that character is becoming much more well-rounded, and so I'm hoping that they're becoming at least slightly more of a morally gray character and a morally gray villain, which is like the best kind where you can sympathize with them. So that answer is changing, and I would love to be asked this again in the future when I might have a better answer. Can you share one of your favorite lines? Sure. This was a kind of hard question because I was kind of like scrolling through draft 2 because some of the comments that I was leaving for myself was, I love this line, don't change this line, this is a great line, I love it, amazing, whatever. And so I was like scrolling through and like seeing what I had highlighted to leave myself those comments for. And situationally, I was able to find a lot of lines that I loved, but they're great because of what happens around them, not necessarily the line itself. And that was so hard because I want to have really good lines to tell you guys. I did pull a couple that I want to share, but I also want to mention that I filmed a video, Everything and Nothing About My Novel, I think it was called. But basically I asked people on YouTube and Instagram, again, those are the two places that I asked people questions, what line numbers they wanted to see from me, because I was going to go through and share some of my lines from my work in progress with you guys. And so if you are interested in hearing some more of those lines, I will leave that linked down below. Trust me, I have much more to lose from that rumor than you do. You'll find everything you need to finally be free. It had started out innocently enough, 2 children in a castle by the sea. Red is the color of a dead man's blood. She knew at the very least where they were rumored to have died. And then I found an honorable mention for this question, and that is, she felt peace, which is the last sentence that I ended up writing for NaNoWriMo 2019. So you asked for one line, I gave you a couple of them. Those are the ones that I was finding right now. And those aren't like my favorite lines, because again, the lines that I absolutely adore, I adore because of the words that are around them. And the other words are what makes that sentence so strong. And so I did have to leave some of those out. I also had to leave out some with spoilers in them and that kind of hint at more of what's happening in the story, so I left those out, but hopefully that satisfies your question. RP Winters asked me, which is the best type of tree? Birch trees. Candy or chocolate? Definitely chocolate, dark chocolate specifically. What is my favorite season? My favorite season is probably either spring or fall. I love summer, but I love summer nights. I might have to go with fall because spring has too many allergies. Nicknames. I actually have never had a nickname. Sarah is just easy enough to say, and so it never got abbreviated to anything. People tried in like 3rd grade when the question was asked, like, what is your nickname or whatever. People tried out Sarah Bear, and I did not like that. And so I'm very happy that it did not stick because it just seemed like ingenuine. You know how like there's a couple nicknames that like everybody with that name can be called by? It's like that's like the one nickname for Sarah's, and I didn't like it, so I didn't want it. And so it didn't end up lasting like more than a week. But because we're talking about nicknames, I do want to say that I have nicknamed my hair the Mane because it kind of does what it wants whenever it wants, and even after like 8 hours of traveling. Today it is still doing its own thing, and it still has plenty of personality for both of us. Go-to outfit, like sporty or like dresses, something else, tell me all the things. Go-to outfit is a long sleeve, soft black shirt, typically with like denim shorts. I do not like wearing full length pants. I love shorts and long sleeve shirts. I do not like wearing t-shirts and jeans. I like it when I'm wearing a long sleeve with shorts for whatever reason. Favorite food? Pasta. Definitely pasta. And if it's not pasta, no, it's pasta. I don't even know what I was trying to think of. It's definitely pasta. Would you rather only ever be able to write in first person or only third person? I started writing LRF in first person and ended up switching to third person like halfway through. My project DE is written in all third person and I love writing in third person, and so I would definitely say third person for the rest of my life. How do you feel about short stories? Would you ever write an anthology or participate in one? I struggle so much with short stories. I feel like I can either write a poem that's like 3 lines long, or I have to write something that's over 100,000 words. Like, I can't do something in between. Even in my short story classes in college for creative writing and stuff, I would always turn in chapters and not short stories because I couldn't like get my mind around a short story. If I am ever able to change that, because I love short stories, absolutely yes. But where I stand right now, I just like can't do it for whatever reason. I would like to, and I would like to continue working on my short story skills, but that is something that I have not yet developed. Somebody asked me how tall I am. I am either 5'5" or 5'6" if it's a good day. Does your writing process change for every book? Great question. Considering that I am on my second novel that I have completed rough drafts of, I want to say not really, but I've also only finished 2 rough drafts. So if we're talking about the 2 books that I have finished the rough drafts of, they kind of all start out the same. They kind of all like exist the same, and I start writing them in the way that I seem to write books, aka these 2 books. And that is by starting out with writing things that I think are going to happen in the book, but not plot-wise. It's either typically setting or quote snippets that I think various characters are going to say, and eventually that, in addition to some world building, turns into a plot, which turns into the book. So I don't know. I might be more open to plotting in the future because I don't really plot currently. So I definitely think it's going to change because I haven't had like a ton of experience with it, but we'll just have to see what happens. What inspired you to become a writer and when did it happen? I think I've been writing since I was 6, off and on, but I'm pretty sure the first book that I have documented was a book that I made my mom sit down and type out as I was talking to her, and then I ended up adding pictures, and then I think I ended up coloring in those pictures. So I basically made my own coloring book. So I've just been a writer for forever. It's kind of been a non-negotiable for me. It's not ever something I like think about. It's not ever something I ever think about dropping or stopping. Like, I think I will forever be a writer, and I don't think that I could ever not be. But what inspired me to become a writer? I just loved reading so much, and I felt like I had stories to tell. How do you schedule your tasks for the day? I can never find enough time. Great question. I was a very bad procrastinator in school, and I would like to say that that has not really leaked over into my professional life. It has a little bit, which is sad. There are lots of like procrastination advice and stuff online. This is by no means expert advice. I personally am a huge fan of to-do lists, but a while ago I came across really good advice that was write your to-do list on a post-it note, because realistically you can't accomplish very many more things than like 5 or 6 big things a day. And so I love that, and so I try to keep my to-do list as streamlined as possible. It's typically like work, laundry, writing, working on a YouTube video, and then like working out. And sometimes I don't get to all 5, but I try to just give myself that checklist that these are the things that I want to accomplish today. However, I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. So I hope that we both can someday. Pizza or homemade pizza? Definitely store-bought pizza, but like store-bought pizza from an Italian restaurant. There's a really good one near my parents' house. Is delicious and makes me wonder why I ever tried to make homemade pizza. I think it's actually better than the pizza that I've had in Italy. So like, it's just not worth trying to make homemade pizza. And I think the last question we are going to be ending with today is from John Halbig, and it asks, if you could write yourself into any genre story, what genre would you choose and why? Fantasy for sure, because sci-fi is like kind of freaky because it's like so big, but I also don't want to get sick. But also when I think of fantasy, I would say fantasy, and preferably with dragons. I would love to wear black ball gowns and have gorgeously embellished knives, and also be really good at fighting, and also own a sword, and also go to balls and also have dragons, and also have royalty, and just like fantasy. Basically, my answer is fantasy. I want to live in a castle. That's what it is. I want to live in a castle. So fantasy. Again, I want to say thank you guys so much for subscribing. I really, really appreciate it. This has been a fun ride, and I'm looking forward to where this goes next. But all right, I think that's going to be it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am Sarah Labrat. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up because it really supports my channel by telling the YouTube algorithm that you liked my video and that someone else might too. If you are not currently subscribed but would like to see more videos from me, make sure you scroll down below, hit that big red subscribe button and that little notification bell next to it so that you get updated every time I upload a brand new video. If you have any more questions for me, feel free to leave them down below. I love connecting with you guys in the comments, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!